Hello class, for today's pro tips I wanted to go over using damage decals to get nice modular ruins, things like that, anywhere where you need to add the edge kind of breaking off or plaster breaking away. So here is my diffuse texture or albedo map, and I'm not going into the material creation in this class, that'll be a separate pro tip, but we can just look at the diffuse and then the normal. The normal was sculpted in ZBrush. I'll include links. There's a couple good tutorials out there already that cover this process, but basically, just like our trim textures, we want it either horizontal or vertical and tiling, so we can lay out our UVs and we're not just baking down a specific shape each time. So that's our textures. Now let's hop into Max. I have started just a flat plane here with cutting out some detail, so I'll go into a little more detail on this upper area. I recommend starting with a flat plane that's subdivided already. That way you have some geometry around that's going to make cutting easier, because you can terminate edges close to those surrounding pieces of geo. So I'm using the cut tool. Again, I really like Max's cut tool. It gives you a lot of freedom, and although it's problematic, it lets you kind of cut anywhere. If you're just not used to it, you can make a mess out of things really easily. But I recommend getting comfortable with it because it allows you this kind of flexibility. Even if you have actual details right in your material, you can cut and model right from those. So that's basically what I did, kind of just imagining some crumbled away plaster. And once we have a flat plane like this, we can use our shell modifier to get the thickness. I already had mine kind of dialed in. That's about as thick as I want to go here. And let's talk real quick about what we're trying to do. So I'll draw up kind of a ruin here. So that material we'll call T for tile. And that's gonna cover the wall. And then on the thickness, the thing that we just modeled out with shell, this will be our decal, which will have an alpha. The alpha right now is just kind of a hard edge alpha, so it looks really crisp where the transition's happening, and it's kind of right in line with this ridge line. So we'll have the decal there, but we also want, for the unique look, we want it to wrap around. So we want this kind of trim geometry coming around the side. So essentially our decal geometry is going to be like a sleeve kind of sitting on top of this, covering the edge here, helping make that transition seamless. So that's the idea. And I wanted to cover a few ways to do that easier. So we have our shell, and I can just go ahead and convert to edit poly, commit to this. Now I want to duplicate this object, so I'm going to do Control V. I can clone in place, and I'll call this damage demo decal. So now we have two identical meshes right on top of each other. And on damage the one on top, I'm going to first I'll delete these bottom polys. We don't need those. And I want to get each side of this, so I'm going to go on a top view and just deselect the thickness. And looking back, we need to figure out a way to get this nice lip around everything, but still have it kind of connected to the thickness that we modeled out. So one thing we can do, we can select each side here. Oh, looks like I accidentally deleted these two. So we'll do Control A, go in top view again, deselect. And in face mode, I will use the inset options, and we can drag our inset amount. So inset just gives you kind of a frame of the geometry. Now, there's going to be certain areas, like this spot in particular, that cross over. You see that? Now, I'm going to kind of try to get an average thickness that I'd like this texture to wrap around. So I'm going to deliberately leave some of those areas that cross over, and I can clean those up later. So as long as the majority of it has the right lip thickness, I'll be fine with that. Now that's good, so I'll say OK. And this is our clone on top, so we really don't need the inside geometry. We just did that trick to get the side lip kind of going over. And we also don't need this down on the bottom here. Now I'm going to make sure I have my material ID assigned, the one that actually has the damage on it. So that is 2 on my multi-sub-object material. So I assign that. And I actually have my normal map as the channel that I'm previewing right now. So let's just look at what we have. Now we have these 2 pieces of geometry. The underlying one, this one is only has a blend material between a couple different plasters. So this is the tiling material underneath. Now we have the decal material on top. Now, right now we might get some Z fighting because the 2 planes are right on top of each other. So we can use push modifier. This pushes off the normal direction, so it either inflates or deflates. So I just want to push it up slightly so it's barely hovering above the underlying geometry. So now that should solve our Z fighting issue. We can collapse this back down. And we can do some easy UVs now. So I'm going to go into unwrap UVW. Bring up my window here. Make sure to turn off ignore backfacing. And that lets us just select big chunks like this all at once. So for our unwrap here, we could simply do quick planar maps and then right click, go in our relax settings and relax by poly angles. And you kind of see it unfolds this a little bit. I'll leave my relax window open too. So what we get, as soon as we did the relax, it gives us the unfolded edge kind of geometry that we got from the inset. And remember, you can always check your checker pattern to make sure it's not distorting, but because of the quick planar map and relax, that I'm pretty sure it's going to be clean. So we have this piece, then we can go through and line it up to our texture. Well, because these proportions are fine, I kind of want to keep those. So I'll hold Control as I scale the corner and line these up. And I basically want these kind of sharp plaster cracks happening on these lips, so right along there. And I want to make sure I give it enough space. It's better to err larger because we don't want any holes in our geometry, because we'll have a transparency mask on this, so some areas might show through. Okay, so that looks good so far. I'm gonna, before doing the rest, let's just preview what this looks like in Engine. So currently in Engine, I just have that flat plane. I will update that. Cool thing about exporting in CryEngine is this, we can just use select and link. So we link to the base geometry without having to attach and stitch things together. So you can keep your kind of working file nice and handy like that. So now that's linked and I can update my export. There's going to be some texture coordinate errors, but it's because we haven't finished yet. So now we get the lip texture kind of wrapping around and the top kind of damage. And that's a decent start, but for one issue we're having, we have smoothing group problems, and just having this flat geometry looks kind of boring. We could use a little more variety in how that's handled. So let's first fix the smoothing group issue. That's an easy one. we basically just want the normal maps from the texture to come through. So we can just select all the faces here, go to our smoothing group section, clear them out, and just assign a single smoothing group. It doesn't matter which one, as long as they're all cleared. We'll just arbitrarily choose 7. Now those are all smoothing together. So when we update, remember, smoothing is not the same as like doing a turbo smooth. This just changes how the vertices receive lighting and if they light together or separate. So now on some of those areas where we were having kind of a chiseled hard edge look, they're soft now. And we're getting the normals from our normal map instead. So now let's add some actual detail in the center line. So we can do a ring selection by selecting this and Alt-R, and I'm going to do a connect, and I'm actually going to add 5 segments. Might seem like a lot, but it's actually not going to add too much geometry. What this allows me to do is now we have a center line right down here, so I can do a loop selection, and then I'm going to convert that to vertice by holding Control and clicking vertex. So that's just how you convert selections. And I'll turn on my soft selection option and increase this. It goes from hot to cold, so the warmer colors are full influence and the cold is 0. So I don't want to adjust these outside vertices at all, so just right before that happens. And I can also adjust my fall off. I kind of want it to bubble and be a little sharper towards the edge. So this is just getting a selection. And a lot of people don't realize, but you can apply modifiers to actual just selections like vertex selections. You don't have to always apply a modifier to the top object level. So for instance, we can go in here and I want to add just some chunky surface noise. So there's actually a modifier just called noise that can handle this. And we can just mess with the strength X, Y, and Z. So Z is going to be the vertical noise. So if we crank that, it's going to add some vertical noise. And we'll do a little on X. Y. Looks like X was a little too much. And this one you can also leave active, so we can adjust that and export and check it out, and then just keep tweaking it. Now the base geometry here, I need to delete this underlying geometry, otherwise that noise is going to cut through it. So our tile geometry basically is just the 2 sides, then our kind of decal top layer, the damage layer, is separate, but it is linked to the layer. So as I mentioned, we can have the noise active and still export. And now that just adds that little bit more custom look. So you would just kind of rinse and repeat for all your shapes. The whole idea here is that you can handle infinite variety of ruins and damaged pieces, and you're not tied to doing a custom bake each time you need a piece of rubble. Now, I will admit, if you were to compare this single piece with a single unique piece, that piece is going to look better, but this just gives you infinite flexibility. So something to think about. A way to take this a step further would be to maybe have some additional bricks or something sticking out of the inside would look cool, or if this was concrete, having rebar stick out would be a nice effect. So hopefully that helps you guys, gives you some ideas on how to do damage in a modular way. Thanks.